Hi, welcome to this week's edition of 26 Minutes With. It's the show that honors those who are leading, making an impact, and creating positive change on the planet, and of course, locally as well. I'm your host, David Cohen. I'm really pleased to have our guest this week. It's Cindy Ashton. And Cindy has a long list of accomplishments. We go back, you and I, a number of years. Get this, 25 years as a singer, actor, entertainer, working with Broadway directors, Emmy Award winners, and more. An honors BA in music, kinesiology, and specializing in relaxation therapy. Boy, we could all use that.
Yes, we can.
She went to York University in Toronto, Canada. You got to give it up. Anybody that went to York University back in those days and you had to walk across that windy, cold campus.
What, is it not like that anymore?
No, they've got the subway goes now into York University.
Oh my God, no, I still remember parking in Timbuktu and like a half-hour walk through the snow and the cold later, I'm finally in class.
Yeah, frozen, right? She's got 20 years plus of keynote speaking, leading presentation, training, developing strategy for companies like MetLife, Royal LePage, and the University of Toronto. 25 plus years of experience in the areas of presentation skills, speaking, voice, body language, marketing, messaging, storytelling, content delivery, and leadership presence. She's interviewed countless of celebrities on the red carpet, at the Oscar and Grammy award parties, and more. Plus, she had an award-winning TV show called Cindy Uncorked, and she won a Telly Award for social issues in 2018 alongside CBS News. Not bad. She also studied with Second City and the Royal Conservatory of Music, the Randolph Academy for Performing Arts, and Live Ent of Canada. I remember Live Ent. I
know. I was working for them right before Garth Drabinsky got arrested and the whole thing fell apart.
Oh boy. Yeah. See, so I did business with them, and you know how hard it was to get paid and get a check out of that company?
Oh, Lordy. I'm not surprised. His daughter also never washed her hands. Because his daughter was working with me at the time. I wasn't her boss or anything, but we were both working, for him. And it was so crazy because we went to the bathroom once and she comes out of the bathroom and she hugs me and I'm like, ooh, you did not wash your hands, did you?
Stay away.
I was like, girl, you gotta wash your hands.
Yeah. It's so gross. Yeah. Oh man. But he was brilliant. He really was a genius.
Yeah, totally.
With him, he just should have just stuck to starting and then bailed. Like he was great at starting something. He was a true visionary. But once that started, get him out, because because it never ended well. Cineplex, he had Cineplex. Remember, that didn't end well either.
Oh, I don't remember. That was so long ago. God.
I know.
It was like 29 years ago that I worked with them.
Yeah. It's almost like another time-space continuum, isn't it?
It really was.
Yeah.
It was pre-internet.
It was. I know it was.
Oh my God. When people ask me, how did you start your business? And I'm like, well, I put an ad in the Penny Saver. They're like, what? I'm like, yes, I put an ad in the Penny Saver. And that's how I started my business 28 years ago, September. And people are like, what's the Penny Saver? I'm like, well, I think the internet was just starting around 30 years ago. It was just starting to get its legs, but it wasn't, we had those, you've got mail, and those like quirky.
The other thing, you used to fax promotional things.
Oh, part of the fax, which does anyone even fax anymore?
No, well, on occasion, maybe, but really rare. And then our cell phones were installed.
Oh my God, they weigh 50 pounds.
I know. Put my back out one year, I'll get back. I'm done with the chiropractors.
Oh my God.
All right, let's get started. Welcome, Cindy.
Hi.
It's fun. It's kind of fun to reminisce, but if you look back, it seems like it was just yesterday, and then all of a sudden here we all are, and all this new technology and these new ideas are coming to the.
Yeah.
It's pretty well.
No, it's funny though, because I think about this and I think about kids today don't know how to research. Like I think back in the day, we had to go to la bibliothèque, to to the library, and we had to like go through the index cards and find the right one, and then we had to reference it. And I'm like, you actually had to work for it.
Yeah,
You had to like, it was like a whole thing, like, and you had to be very good at problem solving because you couldn't Google anything. There wasn't such a thing. Like, I'm almost scared to see what the kids are going to be like today, not having learned to write, actually like write cursive and write on a
yeah,
piece of paper, and not having to learn how to research or be in a jam and not have the internet to help them and have to figure it out. I mean, I think about, when I was starting out as a performer, there was no directories of what jazz clubs were around or what. Like I used to just go into Toronto and visit different restaurants and say, "Hey, do you have a singer?" Like that's what we did back then. There really wasn't any. There's yellow pages,
yeah,
but there wasn't any internet. Like you couldn't. You had to figure it out. Like you had to be a super great problem solver.
yeah. Or remember the encyclopedia that your
Oh,
parents.
I used to love mine. Oh, I remember it was white or it was a cream color. I used
Yeah,
to love
yeah,
touching it and flipping through it. It was awesome.
yeah. Now that and they used to come to your door selling them. It's like,
Oh,
yeah,
I remember that.
or order one for us. Now it's like I don't even think they exist.
Oh, well, there's Wikipedia.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not the same thing.
No, it was something special about.
And what people don't, yeah, I mean, Wikipedia does do references, though. They do reference a lot of
Mhm.
things. So, yeah, I don't know, David. Times have changed and it's interesting. So you got to go with the change. But I do think that there's a lot of value of our lifestyle back in our time.
I agree. I agree.
I
And
feel like there's missing skills now because everything has gotten at a touch of a button.
yeah, and I think one of the missing skills, which is what we're going to talk a little bit about today, is communication skills and finding your voice, right? So nice
Yeah,
nice segue.
nice segue.
So
Welcome to the David and Cindy Show. Sorry, go
yeah,
on.
see, we need a jingle now.
Um,
So talking about finding your voice, you found your voice by having to advocate for yourself at a young age.
mhm,
Can you share
yeah,
the lessons learned at an earlier stage in your life in terms of speaking up and and finding your voice at that younger age?
yeah. So I say the previous version of me because I don't associate myself with illness anymore, but I was born with a 20% chance of living and multiple illnesses and disabilities, invisible disabilities. And that's where the important thing is. Because if you're in a wheelchair, everybody wants to help you because they can see the illness. In my case, you couldn't see the illness. So growing up, it was either that I would advocate for myself, and people were like, "Oh, but you look fine. Don't be such a drama queen." And so my needs were not taken care of. Or I would be in the hospital because I spent one third of my time in and out of hospitals.
Hmm.
And the hospitals for children. I was born and raised in Toronto, and I'm very grateful for them saving my life. And the hospital for sick children in Toronto is a teaching hospital. So imagine as a young child, you're in and out of the hospital, and you've got 5 to 10 doctors poking at you at all times.
Yeah,
And there'd be the first 2, 3 times, like it got to the point where a few times I'm like, I don't want them to touch me. They're like, well, you don't have a choice. And I'm like, okay. And I learned very quickly that my voice didn't matter. And talking about the world of consent, Jesus, I really hope that stuff doesn't still happen now. Or I would be lying there and they would be looking at my echocardiogram, for example, and the doctor would say, without, hello, dude, I'm sitting here. But he would be like, oh, see this right here? Somebody died. And he would go into what the condition is. Somebody died of this just last week. And I'm like, are you freaking serious? Like, hello, I'm here. I'm a human being. Like, seriously. So that was my childhood. And, when you're born with a 20% chance of living, you either die or you fight. And over my time, I have learned that that there's ways to get what you want without having to fight. But as a child, you don't know that. So I was a fighter. I was like, I have literally spent my entire life studying everything to do with getting your voice heard. Everything from how trauma impacts that and all the different layers of trauma, to voice, body language, speaking voice, to messaging, to doing a degree in kinesiology with a specialization in relaxation therapy.
Yeah.
I have literally dissected bodies. So everything to do with what does it really take to get your voice heard and be influential? Because let me tell you, when you grow up invisible, and I know that so many people have grown up invisible in their own way, it's like, how do you get your voice heard without fighting, but with coming from a deep place of truth and power and understanding how to communicate?
Yes. Did you get pushback from the medical staff then for speaking up and speaking your truth? Because you're dealing with a lot of, ego.
Yeah, I mean, I blocked out a lot of my childhood, partially because I was so sick and, and a struggle, but partially because it's a trauma response. So I have a best friend from childhood who remembers stuff that I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I've blocked out most of my childhood.
Right.
And it's a trauma response. And over time, some stuff has come out. I just know for sure that I would advocate for myself and I was completely dismissed and not heard, or being told that oh, but you look fine, or that you're a drama queen, or you're going to be, or, you'll get over it kind of thing. It was always flipped off. And in school, I remember never getting tutors. And so then I would have teachers say, well, you're not very smart and you don't get very good grades. And I'm like, I'm sick. I'm not here half the time and nobody seems to care. So I do, and I still remember when I applied for university, it was so interesting because I applied as a disabled person and they came back and said, you're not disabled. And I'm like, but I missed 1/3 of my schooling and never had tutors. And I literally could not get into university because my grades were 2% too low, which now that I look back at it, given my childhood and not having help, it's pretty freaking amazing that I actually ended up with a 72 or 73% average.
Yeah, no kidding.
But at the time I was suicidal. Like, I was a very suicidal teenager. Like, I just didn't have the support. And that's why I'm so fierce. I'm so fierce in two ways. I'm so fierce about making sure that my clients get their voices heard, because everybody has a voice and deserves that. And for me personally, it's why I have been so fierce about my own career and me getting my voice heard. So, I mean, it's personal, people.
It is, and it does. It becomes personal, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it's
What?
great because I've had an amazing career and I've helped thousands of people, probably millions at this point, really.
So,
Yeah, I actually did the calculation. I've helped millions of people at this point in my
oh,
career.
oh, yeah, I'm sure, just with the speaking and the events and the singing and
Right. And I'm nationally published legitimately. And I mean that, yes, I'm self-published, and there's nothing wrong with self-published because I'm self-published.
yeah.
But I have literally been published with my work going out to millions of people across Canada. So, I know that my work has had this impact and that matters. And that's so cool. But yeah, everybody stand back because this is my purpose and it's a joy, truly.
So just to wrap up, how you found your voice and had the courage, was your family supportive, or did they question, like, the idea that here you are, this young thing, and you went against the so-called experts? Were they supportive, or were they kind of, Cindy, maybe you should listen to these people?
I remember as a child that my parents didn't hold me back, in the sense that we had a jungle gym in the backyard and I would jump around like a monkey and, like, swing upside down on one leg. And I was jumping around, and I'm grateful they did that, because I think if they tried to shield me, I probably would have died. In terms of the rest of it, we've had so many family challenges that I don't think anybody was really paying attention, to be honest.
Got it. They had their own stuff to.
Everybody had their own stuff. So I honor that they have their own stuff. We all have our own stuff. So to be honest, I don't think everybody was wrapped up in their own stuff, and that's cool.
So where did you access this courage to put your voice then out there and put your needs across? Like, that's big for a young lady, struggling with health issues.
Yeah. There's two things. Is that the first is purpose and the second is knowing. And I'm going to go back and explain both of those. people always ask, when did you know that you wanted to sing, dance, and act? I'm like, it wasn't a choice. It was something that I've always seen. As a child, I have always seen myself as a singer, dancer, actor. It has never not been there. So for me, my purpose with that, plus standing up for the causes that I believe in, and really wanting to teach. So we're going to call my strategy work and my training work teaching. But it's always been, I've always had those three things, is that my mission has always been about performing, teaching, and advocating for the underdog. It always has been. So when you have purpose, that keeps you alive. If you have purpose, you've got nothing. You've got to find your purpose. Even if you're not 100% sure of it, find something to live for. And the second was a knowing. And this really happened, and that's part of the purpose, is your knowing. But when I say knowing, something happened when I was 14 years old. When I was 13, I was in the hospital for who knows how many times, but I was in there for another heart surgery. And my roommate was a wonderful young woman named Stephanie, who's about 3 years older. She's 16. And we were talking, and we had both been born with a heart failure and had been through multiple surgeries, and were told that we wouldn't live past our teens. And we made a pact that we were going to live. And she's like, I'm going to be the greatest, heart surgeon in the world and solve all these problems. And I'm like, and I'm going to be the greatest singer in the world and entertain the world and make the world happy. And we made that pact. I was released from the hospital, and I came back a few months later, and I was 14. And I'm like, hey, where's Stephanie? I was not that cheerful. I was near death at that point. But, my spirit was cheerful. Of like, where's Stephanie? I need to find Stephanie. And everybody was kind of avoiding the question, because at the hospital for sick children, Stephanie and I were kind of like the regulars. It's like, you have a regular at a bar. I was a regular at a hospital. It's like, get me a tequila, only I'm 14.
Free card,
Yeah, so everybody was avoiding the question until somebody finally sat down and told me that Stephanie had passed. And that was and two things happened in that moment. Is the first was the shame and the guilt of why her and not me. And the second was the knowing that I cannot stop, because as long as I'm still breathing, and as long as everybody who's listening is still breathing, you are not done in this planet, darlings.
There's a quote I like, Cindy. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. That's from the Bible, actually, but they use that in Spider-Man. So when did you realize, because, I heard there that, it was in the cards for you to do the singing and the performing and the acting and the speaking. But you go a little deeper. When did you realize the magnitude of your gift? And what was it inside of you that has helped you utilize this gift in a way that heals, leads, and inspires others? Because that's really, truly what you made, that choice.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh yeah, I'm singing, come see me. No, it goes a lot deeper with you. Where did that come from? Was that part of it? Your friend asked.
Well, there's two answers, because I have different sides of my career. On the performing side of my career, early in my career, I remember I was singing at an old age home. This is before I consider myself a professional singer. And listen, I was getting paid to do weddings and funerals and old age homes. So I was a professional singer, but not like the level I am now, right?
Yeah.
So I remember it was a very long time ago. I was still back home in Toronto. And I remember I was singing at the old age home, and they absolutely hated me except for one person. And it was my own fault, because I was young and ignorant. I didn't do the research of what this old age home, and it was an Orthodox Jew old age home. And here I walk in with my cute little red dress, and I'm singing Judy Garland, who's string of my heart. I mean, it's funny, it's offensive, and it's funny all the time. Like, it was completely disrespectful. And in my defense, I was in my 20s. Okay, I was in my early 20s at the beginning of my career. And so it was just disrespectful and funny. But everybody hated me except for one person. She came up to me, she held my hand. And she said, and she was crying, and she said, my husband died My husband of, I don't know, 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, whatever it is, you know, he died 9 months ago and I haven't been able to cry. And she said, you sang all the old songs that we used to dance to in the dance hall. And she says, you healed my heart. And that's when I really realized the power of what comes through me as an artist. And the second time that came through as an artist, this is so weird, but I was starring as Miss Hannigan and Annie. Little girls, like it's all ugly singing. It's not my pretty, like it's not the pretty singing. It's like little girls. And at the end of every show, I would be out running my books and my CDs and blah, blah, blah. And every single night, people would come up to me and say, wow, there's something about you that has just healed me. And I was like, what the fuck? My language, but I was like, what the freak?
Yeah.
I was playing the villain. I'm playing an abusive alcoholic woman. But it was like, and I really got it that there's something, those two incidences really anchored in me that there's something higher. There's a higher vibration of the universe, God, Buddha, whatever the hell you want to call it. There's something that when you open up your portals and you surrender, because it's not about fighting. And that's what I've learned in my life. It's not about fighting, actually, because when you fight, it's just more anger in the world. And you don't have to fight if you surrender to your gifts. Then everything flows. And that was really, really, really quite profound, that I'm playing an abusive alcoholic and people somehow are still getting some kind of a healing. And throughout my years performing, people would literally shift and get a healing. And that's when I surrender as the performer, because when I feel doubt or when I feel like I need to try too hard, I don't come across that way as a performer. But it's when we surrender, for all of us, to our gifts, that everything becomes easy. It becomes an alignment. And that's when we are able to heal in the way that we are meant to heal in the world.
That's everybody listening, rewind and listen to what you just said, because that's so powerful. And the idea of surrendering is so powerful, because you actually have to drop yourself, like your ego, your fears, your doubts, your critics. You have to drop it and just be in that moment.
Yeah.
And share your gift. Right.
And here's the thing, you got to let go of perfect. It was interesting. A few weeks ago, I was singing, I don't know what the hell I was singing. I was singing something, and I was just sitting at my computer or at my piano, mucking away, singing. I was like, oh, crap, like I was just singing. And I looked through several of the takes to see what I was going to post. And being somebody who was almost fully opera trained, I only had 1 year of musical theater training. The rest of my training is 100% opera trained. So technically, I'm watching this and going, that's technically almost perfect. I should post that. And I'm like, I ended up posting something else where it was vocally very imperfect, but it was raw and it was truthful. And at the end of the day, here's another thing. When we surrender to the gift, it's not about perfection. It's about connection, not perfection. It's about connection. I was so connected to myself that the world felt that connection and felt the message of the song, versus me being perfect with every note and every pitch and every, where the placement was. And, it just wasn't. Let go. Again, it goes back to surrender. Trust the gift. And that's the hardest thing to do, because we live in a society that judges us, shames us. We're not skinny enough. We're not fat enough. We're not this enough. We're not this enough. I mean, I remember growing up, especially as an actress, I was never skinny enough. And I kept trying to be skinnier. And then I went on a date with this guy and he's like, you're a great gal, but I like queen size girls. And I was like, oh, well, that's a wake up call. Here I am trying to be a skinny bitch and, anorexic practically for my career. And this guy doesn't like me because I'm not fat enough. There's, and it's like, none of that matters. None of that matters. Stop trying instead of start being. Stop trying, start being. Surrender.
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation with a business associate, a gentleman that added me on Facebook about 3 weeks ago, and when we planned to have a introductory Zoom meeting, and you know what he asked me right off out of the gate? He said, "I don't care what you do. I know what you do. I've already looked you up. Who are you being?"
Yes.
It was like, wow, what a nice, interesting start to the conversation.
Yeah.
Who are you being, right? Cindy, I do a lot of work in my practice with youth entrepreneurs and newcomer entrepreneurs. And many are shy and afraid to rock the boat, especially newcomers to
Yeah.
Canada or the US where you're based now. Um, you know, how would you coach, somebody new to Canada or a young person like, 18 to sort of 29 to have that courage? How would you coach them to have the courage to speak and to fight for themselves? Not even fight, but to speak and
Yes, to own their voice, right?
yeah.
Is I would first say be willing, dare to suck. And what I mean by that is when you're new to the country or when you're a new entrepreneur, you're trying to get it all right. Even when you're an old entrepreneur like I am, sometimes I start to go, oh, like I've got my new thing coming up. I've got something new. It's not really new, but I've repositioned my message a little bit and I'm going to be launching it. And I'm like, I'm just going to dare to suck because the thing is that whether you're starting out or not, we get so fixated on trying to be perfect instead of exploring and playing. Where is the energy? Like when you play and explore and go, oh, I'm going to test out this social media post and see what the reaction is. Oh, I'm going to test out this message and see. And it's hard because sometimes you're in a desperate situation. I remember when I immigrated to the US, crazy me, didn't realize the 2008 crash was about to happen. And I arrived here right after that in a country that I didn't know and didn't realize. I knew there's cultural differences, but there are major cultural differences and major differences between the systems. I was like, shit, I'm in a brand new country. I just spent $100,000 in immigration and it was like a do or die, you know? So, and I did it obviously because I'm still here. But, I don't know at the time that I had a dare to suck attitude and I wish that I did. But I definitely had the attitude, I'm just going to try stuff. I'm just going to try stuff. And I would say for a new entrepreneur is try, test out a message, get feedback, ask people questions, be curious because you're not going to find your voice on the first try. And if you do, that's pretty freaking remarkable. And even with me, sometimes it's hard because people look up to me as a leader in the community and I'm like, oh, all right, I'm going to try out this social media post. And some of them really suck. Most of the time I get great engagement on my social media and on my messaging, but I test stuff out still. And it's harder because I'm in the media all the time. I'm like, shit, it's a little harder. It's even more embarrassing at my level, but I don't get embarrassed by it. But I'm like, okay, that didn't work. It did work. It didn't. But dare to suck, play, explore, and notice what lights you up. Notice what's getting responses because that's where your true genius is. And don't be afraid to be different, but don't make other people wrong, right? Have a strong point of view. That's another big thing is don't be afraid to pull on your background and have a strong point of view. Because when you have a strong point of view, the people who are going to be your tribe are going to be attracted to you. So if you're looking for a job, you're going to get hired faster because you had that strong point of view. And if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to get clients faster. But the key is it's not really about making other people wrong.
No.
Because there is somebody for everybody.
Yeah. And it's like trashing your competitors. You don't do that in business because it reflects bad on you. So you don't want to make somebody wrong, but you want to speak your truth, and be okay with it. And I mentioned newcomers because there's also a cultural thing that they bring to a new country like the US or Canada. And especially women. And I do a lot of work with newcomer women's entrepreneur programs, and they're so shy and timid and they're afraid, they're afraid that their husband's going to get beaten, and there's trauma associated with speaking the truth. How do you work with somebody who's got that sort of belief or attachment or experience? And even if you're a kid growing up, sometimes if you spoke up, I used to get told, my dad, he loved me and I loved him. He was like my best friend. But he used to say, you're to be seen and not heard. And I laughed as an adult. I said, if I followed that advice, I'd be bankrupt, right? I would. So how do you coach or guide somebody who's got these traumas associated with
Yeah.
finding their voice and speaking up. How would you?
Yeah, that's that's a big one. You know, unfortunately, we don't live in a society that has a lot of tolerance and curiosity for others.
Mhm.
Um, and you know, with somebody like that, and obviously that's not my ideal clientele, but I do, however, get a lot of women, especially. It's interesting because I work with the people who are already established, but I get a lot of men who are shut down by their wives.
Mhm.
And even though they're not hiring me for their personal lives, they end up getting far better relationships after working with me. And then I get a lot of women who get shut down by men. And it's really sad because both sexes are amazing and bring something to the table, but that's a whole other conversation. So going back to your question, it's the same thing whether you're starting out or you're a new immigrant or you're the husband that's being shut down by the wife or the woman who is trying to find her voice in a man's world. Is that we all have trauma and people don't like to hear that because they think it's a bad thing, and it's really not. It's just part of, you know, and if you look at epidemiology and all the studies in the last 10, 20 years in epidemiology, it's proving that we are actually carrying the DNA of our ancestors. So not only do we have the trauma from our own lives, but we're literally carrying trauma from others. So with my people, even if you don't have a degree in kinesiology and specializing in relaxation therapy, you can find ways to learn how to breathe. There's all kinds of resources on the internet. And the key is to learn to take the time, because when you are in your lizard brain, okay, we're going to go into science. I'm going to pull up my science degree right now. This is so much fun. I think it's fun. But here's the thing, when we're holding trauma, what happens is that it means that our sympathetic nervous system is triggered, which is our stress response. When our stress response is triggered, it means that we are not able to think clearly because our heart is racing a little bit more, our muscles are tense, and it scatters our brain. So when you're not thinking as well, you're going to be even more traumatized and you're going to be even more scared. But when you learn how to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your relaxation response, it relaxes your muscles, it slows down your heart rate, and it focuses your brain. So if you're in a situation where you're traumatized all the time or you're stressed all the time, you're going to automatically go in with fear. So it's really important to learn breathing techniques.
Yes.
So what I would suggest is that you, the way first start by just breathing in and out on equal beats. So like 1, 2, 3, exhale, 1, 2, 3. Just get yourself balanced. And then once you're balanced, exhale longer than the inhale. So you take a breath in, 2, 3, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and in, and just let yourself really exhale that air down into the ground. So that's the first thing. And anybody can breathe. You're already breathing, but breathe consciously and do that several times a day. So part of it is doing that, you know, and you've got all kinds of guided visualizations and meditations and breathing exercises on YouTube, and it's free.
Yeah, Wim Hof, Thomas Hubble. There's a number of them, right?
Right, and there's apps. You can also download a bunch of apps.
Yeah.
Is there one called Calm? I'm on glow.com. Anyway, so the second piece is that it's really important to get access to your intuition. So people often ask me, Cindy, you've traveled to like 30 countries by yourself as a woman, and sometimes in dangerous places, which is crazy. And they're like, aren't you worried? And I'm like, no, because I'm so connected to my instincts. Right. And so when we're connected to our instincts, then I know when I'm safe and I know when I'm not. And I have been in situations in some countries, which I will not mention the countries, where I can sense that there is a bad situation going on. Like once I was in a country and I was like, oh, something's not right here. I can feel it. Like I could feel it because I was so grounded and present. And I'll tell you about the science of how to get to your intuition in a moment. And I was like, nope, we've got to go. And I was with a group of people. I'm like, I don't care what any of you say. We are leaving. You all need to trust me. And they're like, it's kind of reminded like we're leaving now. And an hour later, a bomb went off where we were. So how do you access intuition? So a lot of people go, oh, that intuition, gut feeling stuff is full of shit. So here's science. If you believe in science, if you don't, I really have nothing else to say. But if you believe in science, we have our brain, which is our brain, and then we have a second brain, which is our emotional brain, and that is it's in our solar plexus. It's called the celiac nerves. It's about an inch or two above your belly button. When you are learning to breathe, it's not just learning to exhale longer than the inhale to relax, but it's about breathing deep into the pelvic floor so that you're actually, when you're breathing in, you're massaging those celiac nerves in your belly. The reason why we want to massage the celiac nerves in the belly is because they activate your emotional intelligence, that emotional brain, which is your intuition. It gets you connected to yourself. And so, especially for people who are afraid, who are in fear, who are functioning from that, I need to keep myself safe. I mean, my family's from the Middle East. I mean, my mother would tell me stories growing up in Lebanon where her and her brothers and sisters, they were in a refugee camp. They would get out of the tent and they would listen to hear where the bombs were coming from and decided their route to school based on where the bombs to avoid the bombs. Like that's trauma. And a lot of immigrants are coming to Canada, to the US, highly traumatized, right?
Yes, yes.
And we have to remember that. So learning to breathe is the first step. And then the second step is learning to breathe down into the pelvic floor, actually be able to fill up your belly when you take that inhale. And then because it massages those muscles. So not only are you calm or those nerves, but then you start to be able to access your intuition. And it's a muscle you have to build, but it is absolutely fantastic. It has saved me. I remember I went on like a date from like, I don't know what it was. I was in like Panera Bread or something or Bear Burger, whatever. And there was this guy who was chatting me up. It wasn't a date. He was chatting me up. But the minute that I saw him, I thought I could see, because I do body language as part of my skill set. I was like, I think this guy's a predator. And then he came down and sat with me. He's like, hey, can we chat? And I'm like, sure. We were chatting for an hour or two and I was observing and I'm like, this guy's a sexual predator. And I knew it, partially because of gut, partially because I read body language and I can tell. And so it took me 3 tries to get his full name because I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to go on date with you. I need to research you. And then when I finally got his full name and I Googled him, he had been arrested and convicted for rape.
Wow.
And but before he'd obviously sat down, I had a strong gut feeling that there's something not right with this guy, and that it was substantiated because I'm a body language expert. So this is the power of learning those skills.
So breath work, letting go, surrendering, having
Breathing
courage.
into your pelvic floor, breathing in
Yeah,
on that breath, really connecting to your intuition. It's not hooey gooey, it's science.
yeah. Letting go of perfection, just being you and having that courage, right?
Play.
And play, yeah, play.
When you have the play energy of like, oh, I wonder if this is going to work. It's cool, you know.
Yeah, and when
You know,
when you played as a kid, you played all day. You didn't even look at the watch, you know.
we were present.
Yeah.
All we wanted to do is climb up those monkey bars. At least me. I was like, give me the monkey bars. I'm going to hang by one leg.
So I grew up in Ottawa, so I'd play hockey at the rink, and came home.
Oh, that's awesome.
Came home and I had to defrost for an hour.
Oh my God. Ottawa's so beautiful, but
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, I'm okay not being in cold weather. Just saying.
Yes, I hear you. I don't blame you.
Being in New York, everyone's like, is it? Oh, they're like, oh, it's better in New York. And I'm like, it is. We have the same weather as Toronto, except for Toronto, the weather is biting in the winter. It has days where it's really biting, and here it's cold with rarely a biting day. And I'm like, I can deal with this weather better. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah.
I've got more questions, so
Okay.
let's save this for our deeper dive next. And when we continue with our deeper dive, I want to talk to you about healing trauma, and how you managed to do that in your work and your life, but also to also look at just some of the other things you've done in your career, and where the future is for you as well. So I want to first of all thank you for being guest on 26 Minutes with, and I also thank those listening. But Cindy, before we do that and we go into our deeper dive, where do we reach you to learn more?
Well, you can go to cindyashton.com. Or if you're interested in learning how to speak from your power, go to speakfromyourpower.com/training.
And it's right there in your, yeah, okay. I like that. So two places to connect. And you're also on LinkedIn, and you're really active on LinkedIn. I gotta tell you, some people are like nothing.
I love LinkedIn. I get so much business from LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I've met so many phenomenal people from LinkedIn. It's awesome.
Yeah, and you post a lot too.
I post about once a day. In the last couple of weeks, I haven't as much because I'm working on my launch, this new launch, our
Yeah.
team. So we've been busy, but yeah,
Cool.
normally I'm there every day.
Yeah, this is good. I want to thank you, and we're going to go to the deeper dive next. Cindy Ashton, what a joy. And we'll be back. For those who want more, just click below. We got our deeper, or click to the right on YouTube. We've got our deeper dive segment next.